Hello and welcome back to Open. You know, we're always reminding you to get social with us. Don't forget to tweet us at BronxNetTV and also tweet me at Rena Valentine. So people often say that someone without the knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without its roots. Some may say that finding those roots is impossible, but is it really? Well, our next guest has experienced that search, not only of finding her roots and origin, but also herself, inspiring many through her story by sharing with the world how she became Latina. Please welcome to the show award-winning journalist, cultural activist, author, and filmmaker, Raquel Cepeda.
Thank you for having me, Rena. And I'm really excited about being on BronxNet because, you know, the more gentrified New York becomes, the more important public access television is for us to be able to keep up with the pulse of really what's going on in the hood and in our communities.
I appreciate that.
So I'm so excited about being on here. I just love public access television.
Well, thank you for saying that, and thank you for being here with us. Why, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know you were sitting on the sidelines watching us because we're live, people. And I don't know if people really get what that means. It's like live means that we shoot live. There's no take two. It is what it is, and it's got to be on the first time out. And none of this is really rehearsed.
Yes.
We just kind of like vibe off of each other. I mean, we know
That's
about each other.
It's so cool, right?
Yeah.
We could just vibe, and people, I think, feel that. Right?
I hope.
Screen, yeah.
I hope. I know when
Unless
you hear
the vibe is negative,
right?
People can.
Well, we don't even put that out there. Yeah. But let's talk about Bird of Paradise.
Yeah,
you know what? Let's just share with everybody a little bit of your background because you have a very interesting background. I only listen. She's this, she's that, she's an author, and journalist. But you are all of these things, and you do them very well. And just for the sake of people understanding the diversity within your skills, not just within your cultural background, right. I just thought we could share a little bit about people you've worked with and what you've done.
Well, I started basically, I'm born in Harlem. Unfortunately, I'm not born in the Bronx, or I would have been dying to get on the Bronx Hall of Fame. But I was born in Harlem, then I was raised in Dominican Republic and in New York City, and I came to live with my dad in 1981. And there hip hop culture basically was a thing that I used, the cultural tool that I used to express myself. And I've always wanted to work within the community. My first dream was to be like a ghostwriter for Rakim. And when that didn't happen, I was like, well, maybe I should become a poet or do something. And I got down with the whole poetry scene in the mid-90s, not to date myself. And at the same time, I started writing, I was a journalist. I started interviewing artists and rappers and people that meant a lot to me. So from there, I started becoming, like a long-form journalist, and I became an editor, and I contributed to a lot of different magazines, and I started working for Russell Simmons as the editor-in-chief of his now defunct magazine, One World. And that was a real joy because I can take the things that are important to me, being international, and really put them into the magazine. That was extremely cool. And then from there, I edited a book about hip-hop journalism and made my first documentary film about hip-hop and diamonds, basically how American hip-hop, how our culture is so obsessed with all that is material and diamonds at the time, and how that intersected into itself into the war in Sierra Leone. So I brought 3 rappers to Sierra Leone, West Africa, to see firsthand the effects of what they said here, of what they say here in America, and how they portray themselves.
I'm just sitting here listening to you in fascination because it's not you just following stories. There's a depth to why you're following these stories, which actually lead up to this book, right? It's
mission work.
Right.
It's the stuff that I feel that fulfills me, and that, once we all have to go at some point. And I want somebody to know that I existed and that I had an opinion, and I want somebody in the next generation to either build upon it or destroy it, but do something.
Right. I think we all do. I think everybody in their existence wants to be remembered, right? I remember attending a seminar one day, and they said the richest place in the world is the cemetery because that's where all the stories are.
Wow.
I know, that's really profound.
So profound.
Yeah, that's really profound, but it's something that stayed with me because it made me realize that, you know what, it's true, we just all want to be remembered.
Right.
Right? And so being remembered also entails knowing who you are, which leads us to Bird of Paradise, how I became Latina.
Right.
Now, how does one become Latina?
Well, I've always wondered where my people came from before they were from the Dominican Republic. How did I get here? Why, when I look at society and I look at what's going on around me, why is there so much antagonism against the Latino American population? Why are we so divisive with each other sometimes? Why are the vestiges of colonialism, which I think is a worse than racism, ageism, anything, the vestiges of it, I see it within our community and how we express ourselves and how, we always want to straighten our hair and do this and do that. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but how, for the wrong reasons.
Right.
I've always wondered all these things. So when I came back to live with my dad in 1981, I remember my father being very anti-Dominican and not wanting to really accept his culture. And then I always thought of the Dominican Republic with love, right? And it's part of my heritage. So I became kind of obsessed with, well, why is it that we want to fit so badly into mainstream? And what does it really mean to be Latino? So that book, the first memoir by a Dominican American author in popular culture, is two parts. The first part is Bird of Paradise. I grew up in a neighborhood called Paraíso in Santo Domingo.
Which means paradise in English.
Which means paradise in English. And Bird is a nod to Dr. Maya Angelou. I know why caged birds sing. And it'll make sense once you read it. And then the second part is an ancestral DNA journey I embarked on, which basically takes an unlikely route to discovering what it means to be Latino. And what I discovered is that to be American is to be Latino because we are the genetic circumstance of Columbus being discovered in the Caribbean.
Wow, that's ancestral DNA. How far does... Okay, so what do you learn going through investigating through ancestral DNA?
Well,
I mean, that sounds really like digging, like you're digging deep.
You're digging, but, I remember with women, you only get your one side because, your mother, you only inherit your mitochondrial DNA. Men get their mother's and their Y DNA. So I had to actually track down people that I didn't even know I was related to. I found one person, a cousin on Facebook, and asked them to swab. And by then, in doing that, I waited for the results and the analysis, and I started building this tree. So while you don't get all of the answers, you really get a nice, you get a lot of revelations. And for me, it was it was a spiritual journey, and it also affirmed a lot of things that I believed in growing up that the West kind of shies away from. Like, for example, the idea of having spiritual guides and of having your ancestors walk with you. And, when you're walking in the Bronx, you're walking in Manhattan, and people are like, "Tu tienes un indio contigo," that kind of, is there something to that?
Right.
So when I embarked on that adventure, I realized that there was, and that, I feel like I have family all over the world. And that I feel like we Latinos are American. We're the first Americans. We're the first Americans because the first European colony in the Americas was in Santo Domingo.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful because I always said we are the original rainbow people. The rest of the world's catching up to us now.
Exactly.
Really, I mean, they call it what do they call it? Gentrification,
miscegenation, but in a positive way because it is what it is, and that's why I think we can do so many things and why we can float into so many spaces, and that's why I'm against those boxes of having to identify. If I only identified as Afro-Latina, then I would be ignoring the indigenous side and even the sides that I may not like that exist within me. So I believe in being balanced. And in that, we cannot be living in these little check boxes.
Wow, this is wonderful. This sounds like a wonderful book. I'm really looking forward to reading it. I could just sit here and listen to you all day because, we do know the basics of Latinos. We're born with European, African, and indigenous blood. So it's kind of like three. That is the world. Right? And Asian too.
Yes, and Arabic. And, people talk about crypto Jews. There were also people that were pretending to be Christian that were Arabic, because a lot of our ancestors come from the south of Spain. And, so you find people are finding that they have Jewish ancestry, all kind of really different, interesting things. And the one thing I can say about that without giving it away is what I didn't find was a link to Spain.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Interesting. That's really interesting considering our secondary language. Well, here in New York, where it's Spanish. I mean, in the Caribbean, well, some of the ones that are colonized by Spain are Spanish, but and they're not connected. That's really interesting.
Well, it made sense because when I basically, you learn in parochial schools and schools throughout America, and for me, I can only talk about New York City, is really to not love yourself. When you go to school, the missionaries that came to the New World came as God-fearing people to save the savages and the primitives and all. And I really learned that quite the opposite is true, and that the savagery was happening on another end. And I became very proud of where I came from, and I also understood that the Dominican Republic and the Caribbean was like New Orleans before New Orleans, hundreds of years before New Orleans. So it makes sense that, you know, we look like the way we do, and we have children that look like the mailman's children, because you never know, right? Everybody is like, oh, the milkman's children, right? Because we have, it's a genetic crapshoot.
Right.
And that makes us so international, and it makes us so, you know, it makes us be able to move and to navigate not only in our communities but throughout the world. So that's it's an empowering feeling to find out and know and make peace with where you come from.
Beautiful. So where can people get the book and empower themselves?
At a bookstore, anywhere where books are sold, online. It's always cheaper online, and the soft cover just came out a couple of months
ago. Right? It just came out in February. I mean, this was released last year, and then you just got the soft cover February, right?
February, yes. And it's Atrio Simon & Schuster, and you know, it makes me feel really good when it finds its way onto the lap of a new reader, because the love that I get back is really, really priceless. It tells me that I'm walking in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Raquel Cepeda, I know, we could just be here all over. They're wrapping me hard. They're like, come on, ladies, come on, wrap it up already.
I understand.
And I'm like, no, I don't want to, but
all good things must come to an end.
I know. Well, we're just going to have you back on. That's what we're going to have to do.
My pleasure.
Oh, that was so wonderful and so enlightening. Thank you for educating us in the way that you did. That was well taken, and I hope you guys got it as well. So once again, for more information on Raquel Cepeda, you can visit her. You can visit her on her website, which I believe is the Jolly Rancher.
Jolly Rancher, or Raquel Cepeda on Twitter.
Okay, or Raquel Cepeda on Twitter. Everybody's on Twitter. That's right.
Yeah.
So it's at Raquel Cepeda.
Yes.
And we do have to take a break, but we'll be back with our exclusive sports roundup with Bobby C. Don't go anywhere.